Morning. So I want to do a little study this morning. Interestingly enough, everything I've picked up coordinates together, and it's going to be a Bible study today. While I challenge some of the ideas in the Bible and plan to continue to, I also believe that it holds great power. And a lot of the folks that I study sort of unpacked or unleashed, I think, the power of the Bible in a different way. And that's sort of the tone that I take. But when we resist the book and say it's all crap, we throw in the baby out with the bathwater, just because sometimes we've either been hurt through the messages of it. I'm working with a young woman who's a Marine, and for example of what can happen to someone when it comes to, what is it called, spiritual abuse, with the Bible. She was in the Marines. She lost her best friend. Her best friend died. And when she went to go ask for a therapist, they said, well, that's going to go on your record. So you can have a therapist, but we would recommend a chaplain because that won't be documented. When she went to see the chaplain told her that it was her fault that her friend died because she's gay and God is punishing her. So that's the kind of thing that can happen with the biblical message that is so damaging. And so this young woman, is very anti, understandably, because there's been a lot of oppression about who she is, who God designed her to be, let's be frank, because a certain part or segment of Christianity or people that study the Bible have decided that a certain sexual leaning or who you're attracted to is of the devil. And that's not even in the Bible, for the record. I think they go off of a line that has to do with sodomy, which wouldn't even involve female gays, if you want to get really literal about it. But I'm not going to get into that conversation. But what I am going to say is, as someone who was highly resistant to the Bible for a long time because of spiritual abuse I experienced, I'm especially passionate about that topic. But I've worked through that, and I can say that I'm allowing it in still, and I'm proud of that and able, because I really do think that it's more of a psychic mental journey about the law of attraction, and that's a lot of what I speak about here. So your Emmett Fox, your Neville Goddard, it completely works in. Abraham stays off of it altogether, I think, because of what I'm referencing here. There can be a lot of resistance, people that are for it or against it, and I don't want to get in that conversation. I think everyone can agree that either it's a message of love or not. And if it's a message of love, then punishment doesn't have a place in it. And there's a lot of people that will say punishment does have a place with love, and it is a result of the message they hear and the faith that they're in. But you cannot resolve the idea of an all-loving, all-powerful, all-present, all-knowing God and then saying there's punishment. And while people have accepted that because that's what they've been taught in a faith, it doesn't make it logical or accurate. It just means, oh, well, love and hate can exist in the same place. That's a completely resolvable concept for a lot of folks that are part of organized religion, and it shouldn't be, because you're claiming there's an all-loving God, and an all-loving God would not be involved in punishment of his creations for expressing what they were created to be, period. And that's an unresolvable conflict unless you begin to interpret the Bible in the way we talk about here, which is hell can be created based on your vibration level on this planet, right? We're so free, we can choose bondage. And, we are simply designing God in our image. So the God of the classic organized religion is more of a monarch, more of a king or queen, more of like a Putin or a Kim-Jong Un, where if you don't believe in me, I'm not just going to put you to death, but I'm going to eternally torture you. And what's fascinating in the West is we wouldn't accept that in our leader. We would consider that to be evil, and we would take pride in saying, I'm not going to bow to you, go ahead and off my head. But we accept it in our God. And there's a disconnect, a big disconnect there. So anyway, with that, I'm also noticing that there are certain cycles. I have like some dated readings, and it's interesting because they seem to be flowing together in a similar way. So I'm beginning to realize that I think there's a certain cycle of the year. We were talking about Scorpio season, which is, I'm sure, a little, astrologically woo-woo for some folks, but there's a cycle of energy that occurs. I love how Alan Watts is always talking about you're not an independent, separate thing. Like, we think there's nothing in the space that connects us, but there's a lot. We're actually just one spontaneous process happening. And so there are nature processes happening with seasons and changes and planets and lights. And I think that really affects us. So it's been a tough few days. I'm going to be honest. There's a lot going on. My hubby, who I love so much, is suddenly having tons of anxiety driving, which makes it very difficult to work because he works 45 minutes away. And it's bringing up a lot of old trauma and pain. I've been through enough of this stuff to know that there's good things ahead, but it's always hard to see somebody you love in pain. There's a lot of conflict at my job. I always was the easygoing, I'm not going to say anything type of person. I don't know if you can relate to that. Just go with the flow, don't confront. I know I've said that a lot on here, but that's very much changing for me. I lost my voice for many years, and this is a big piece of getting it back. So what's happening is I'm being put in a circumstance where no one is speaking up except for me. And now I'm just I'm going with it and I'm accepting it. It's not comfortable, but I seem to kind of be having all these straight conversations and kicking everyone's butt a little bit in a professional, way, but also saying like, this isn't working and I'm not going to be a part of it. This is like all of the things. And it shows me too that I have, which I don't even touch on here, but a lot of business and operational knowledge that is so strong and would make me an excellent operations consultant. I can come in and kind of solve the problem of whatever's going on in an environment, but in order to, I can assess and realize what's going on, you have to get the buy-in of the people creating it to make a difference. So with that, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to go ahead and do a devotional from Bounce. It says, Day 3, these things I remember. The psalmist was depressed. The Psalms are reflections of the writer's cries, their raw emotions, their frustrations and anger, their impatience with God to relieve their pain. And I'm going to say real quickly before I get into this, the reason I'm sharing where I'm at, what I'm experiencing, is because if you're here, I'm going to think you are in the same place. And so hopefully what I offer here will help uplift you the way it's helping to uplift me. You can only be in a relationship with yourself, and that means we're alike. So anyway, I just wanted to add that's why it's important to me to share what's coming to me today. Okay, so it says their frustrations and anger, their impatience with God to relieve their pain. For instance, the quote, my tears have been my food day and night. Can you relate? Are you struggling to eat? Do you find yourself crying through the day, crying through the night? Discouraged, overwhelmed? I've been feeling that way. You? The people who wrote the poetry of the Bible could relate, but they also had a great tool. These things I remember, it says. The writer of this psalm, it's Psalm 42, she's quoting, allowed his tears to shift his focus to memories of God's faithfulness. He reflected on times when he'd seen the evidence of God's hand in previous situations. He reflected on what he had witnessed in other seasons regarding the character of God. The psalmist allowed his pain to pivot his eyes to the origin of his hope. Remembering truth prevented him from being stuck in his depressive state, and it positioned him to bounce forward. So when we put that through the lens of vibration and law of attraction, what's actually happening is when you focus on a problem, you're very much requesting a solution that's just emanating from you when you're in pain. I don't want to be in pain. I want, if you're starving, you're emanating a huge vibration that you want food. And so that type of thing. So when we're in deep pain and we're crying and we're discouraged and we're overwhelmed and we're expressing that, we're asking for a solution. But the vibration of a solution is very different than the vibration of a problem. And so we get deep into that rut, into that, we let our vibrational level drop, like I have on my little vibrational scale, discouragement, overwhelmment. But then what happens is we begin to pop up. As soon as we can kind of thoroughly process that and get it out, we bounce. And that's vibrationally bouncing. And once you bounce up, then you can begin to get to the vibration of the solution. You've been asking for it. When you ask for it, it's given because God is good, or source, or whatever you want to call it. Your answer's been given. You have to get into the vibrational state where it can come in. And so once you start to focus on something positive, whether it's a positive memory, whether it's faith, any of those different vibrations, which is what's happening in the psalmist, suddenly the good starts to flow in. Suddenly the solution starts to flow in. Because you're changing your vibration from thinking nothing ever works out for me and everything's always terrible. So it says, ponder that. If you need to cry out today to God, feel free. The psalmist did, and you can too. God created your body to release tears, and he can handle your raw emotion and pain. But allow these tears to prompt you to remember God's faithfulness. evidence of his character in your life, and experiences of victory. These memories are evidence of the hope that applies to today's pain. Verse of hope. Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation. My prayer for you today. God, I pray for my friends who are reading this devotion today. Remind them that you created them with a capacity to cry. Remind them that you track all their sorrows. Not a single tear goes unnoticed. Remind them how much you loved the psalmist's heart and how eagerly you welcome them as they bring their raw emotions to your throne today. Help them today in the midst of their discouragement. Help them remember your faithfulness, your goodness, and your power. Remind them of the times in their lives when you drew near, when they felt your presence, when you intervened, when you delivered, when you saved. Remind them of the desperate times in their past when they saw evidence of your hand. Remind them. Help them to never forget. I pray that you'll use their memory to help them bounce forward. Now that's obviously through a little bit more of a monarchist God view. I have a view that really I'm just working with my inner being, and so the goodness will flow in as much as I allow it. So to balance that, I'm going to bring up Mr. Emmett Fox, which I find fascinating that his reading of the day keys right into this. But before we read it, he's asking that we read, interestingly enough, Psalm 27. This isn't 42, so I'm going to read Psalm 27. An exuberant declaration of faith, a psalm of David. The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life, of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked came against me to eat up my flesh, my enemies and foes, they stumbled and fell. Though an army may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war may rise against me, in this I will be confident. Now, I never support violence in the Bible. I don't think that anything around God, as the concept that I have it, would be involved in violence. I think what we're talking about here is the army within, the emotions within, the fears, the discouragement, the overwhelmment, same thing, right? This war is going to rise against me. An army encamps against me. We feel it. We feel it in every area of our life. We're not on a battlefield, but we are in the sense of our own mind and thoughts, negative thinking, negative energy. One thing I have desired of the Lord that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. That's an inner house. To behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple, for in time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret place of his tabernacle. It's talking about meditation. He shall hide me. He shall set me high upon a rock. And now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me. Therefore I will offer sacrifices of joy in his tabernacle. I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Lord. And you probably have some translation changes there. But when you shift to joy, you're lifted up above your enemies. In fact, you wouldn't even see them as enemies if you really get lifted high enough on a vibration, right? We're branches of the same tree. And then you and sing praise because you realize in your joy that your perception was what was wrong. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy also upon me and answer me. When you say, seek my face, my heart said to you, your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help. Do not leave me or forsake me, O God of my salvation. When my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take care of me. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me in a smooth path. Because of my enemies, do not deliver me to the will of my adversaries. For false witnesses have risen against me, and such as breathe out violence. I would have lost heart unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. False witnesses, those are just going to be thoughts, lies you tell yourself. So let's read what Emmett Fox has to say. It says, read Psalm 27. The 27th Psalm is one of the greatest meditations in the Bible. When trouble of any kind comes into our life, it is because we have allowed our consciousness to fall to the level where fear and limitation can reach us. Any mental activity that enables us to raise the spiritual standard of the soul is a form of prayer, and the Bible abounds in such forms. The history of solving a problem is often this: An individual is worried about something or he feels ill. As soon as he realizes his state, he declines to accept the condition and proceeds to bring about the necessary raising of his thought. He reads this psalm carefully, interprets it spiritually, allows his mind to dwell upon the principles enunciated, appropriates them to himself, thus regaining his peace of mind. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? This one verse is one of the most complete texts in the whole Bible. It might well be written over the portals of every church and school in the land, for within it is contained in embryo the complete Jesus Christ message. It postulates not merely the existence of God, but the living presence of God in man. Consciousness. The inner light is no mere passive or static presence, but a dynamic power, light, salvation, and strength. The Lord is the strength of my life. Having promised us light, the psalm now goes on to promise strength or power. We are, in fact, to be endued with power from on high, and need no longer trust to our own inadequate efforts. This wonderful verse then sums up its great message in the word salvation, and with the penetrating psychological skill, it obliges us to ask ourselves point blank what there is now to be afraid of. When we realize that we are creating our reality, that our choice about where we're at vibrationally, what we're thinking about, like he says, when we fall vibrationally, believing like a problem's really getting us down or a sickness is really getting down, and we accept the condition, it continues to manifest. When we say, hey, this is not real, the Lord is my salvation, really the Lord is talking about consciousness. It's what Neville speaks about a lot, my I am, that I'm the one that's allowing and creating this consciousness to become true. When I shift out of it and say God is eternally good or source or whatever you want to call it, it's my allowance of shutting it out. It's me shutting out the goodness that's allowing that to happen. As soon as I open up to realizing that I'm safe, that I'm loved, right? That there is no death, just a transformation of form, and that suffering does not have to be real for me because I have the key to know that God lives within me, in my I am, my creative power. And when I focus on a positive vibration, when I focus on what's real and good, and that I'm a part of that, and it's a reality for me, and I have faith that it can happen no matter what I see in front of me, and I put my faith in what I know to be true, what is unseen until it is seen. As Wayne Dyer said, you gotta believe it to see it. We have it backwards, and then it'll show up for us. And so with everything I have going on and how I was feeling, I have to say that really helped shift me. Probably can even see a shift in my energy, especially as I go out with the day that I have ahead. So I'm gonna jump out. I'm working all day. I'm sure you're doing things. Hopefully this study helps you prepare for Christmas, helps you feel inspired with hope that you have control over your life. And that's not to feel bad if it's not the way that you want it. Because again, we're gonna have circumstances. We can't look at what's in front of us as evidence of who we are and where we are. That's when we get caught up in the problem. We have to continue to say, this is purposeful, this is good. God loves me. I know great things are coming. I live a great life. I'm blessed. I'm equal in all ways to everyone, and goodness can flow to me the same way that it can flow to everyone. I can't flow it to everyone, but I can flow it to myself and be evidence of what's possible for others. So with that, I just want to say thank you for being here. As always, I love you, and I hope you have a beautiful, blessed day.